Hi everyone, welcome to day one of Unit 3. The sub should be passing around a new unit packet for you. There is no warm-up today other than to take out your compass and straight edge. So that homework that's listed for day one, that'll actually be tomorrow night's homework because tonight you should just be studying for the test tomorrow. If you haven't done so yet, I would strongly suggest to do the additional review that is posted on Schoology under Unit 2. It's the first link there on Schoology in Unit 2. The second link would be the answer key so you can check your answers. And then the third link is a recording of yesterday's review that we did in class so that if you needed to look at the constructions and see the movements to practice them, you could do that. But again, your homework tonight, you should be working on the extra review in Schoology. And I am going to come in and be after school today. So if you would like to come in and do that review after school and get help to make sure you're fully prepared for the test tomorrow, I will be in today during ninth period, during the after school period. So I strongly suggest that that's a good option as well to get ready for the test. Okay, so we're going to need compass and straight edge, as I mentioned, um, and we're going to be starting out on page one. We're going to look at mid segments today. Now, on the bottom of page one, I want you with your straight edge, just make yourself any random triangle. So what we're going to do is we're going to do our perpendicular bisector of two of the sides. Doesn't matter which two sides. So I'm going to start out, I'm going to do the perpendicular bisector of this side. When we do that, we want to have our point on one of the endpoints and have our compass open more than halfway to the other endpoint. I'm going to swoop it in both directions. Now I'm going to reverse it, swoop it in both directions. And then I'm going to connect those two intersections. And what we're really concerned with is where the midpoint of that side is. So wherever that line you just drew with your straight edge, where that hits the side, that's what we really care about. And then we're going to do the same thing with the second side. So I'm going to do it to this side over here, but you can do it to any second side in your triangle. Make sure your compass is open more than halfway to the other end point of the segment. We'll reverse it. Keep the compass the same as you reverse it. And it is starting to get messy, so we got to kind of keep track of our intersections. We'll connect those intersections. And wherever that crossed the side, that is our midpoint. So then the last step is we are going to connect those midpoints. So use your straight edge to do that. I'm going to switch mine to blue just so it's easier to see. So by connecting those two midpoints, we just constructed what's called a mid-segment in a triangle. One thing that I want you to notice is the slope of that mid-segment is the same as the slope of that side that it's not touching. So for me, this bottom side. So when you have a mid-segment, because those slopes are the same, it's going to be parallel to the third side of the triangle. The other thing I want you to try is let's set our compass to the length of our mid-segment. So put your point on one end of the mid-segment, pencil on the other end. And what we're going to do is see how many of this length segment would fit on that side it's parallel to. So I'm going to come down here, put a little mark, so there's one of them. And if I line it up, notice it's exactly 2. So there's 2 ways we can think of this. The mid-segment is half the length of the third side, or you can think of it as the third side is double the length of the mid-segment. Those are both essentially saying the same thing. And those are our 2 properties for mid-segments. So if we flip over to page 2, we'll get that down to notes and then we'll do some problems. So a mid-segment of a triangle connects the midpoints of the two of the sides. That's what we just did. So our first thing we want to fill in, the mid-segment is parallel to that third side. And the mid-segment is half its length. So we can either say the mid-segment's half the length of the third side, or the third side is double the length of the mid-segment. Those are both saying the same thing. So we have not seen it in symbol notation yet, but that's our symbol notation for parallel. Those 2 vertical lines right next to each other, that means parallel. So DE is parallel to CA in this picture. We could also say that DE is equal to half of CA, so the mid-segment's equal to half of the third side. Or another thing we could say is that CA is equal to double the mid-segment. Those are both doing the same thing, because if you divided the 2 over, it would give you 1/2 CA equals DE. So knowing that, take a moment, share in your groups, what would the length of DE have to be? And hopefully you were able to share that it should be 9 because it should be half the length of the third side. All right, going down to the bottom, notice we've got tick marks on this picture. Because we have one tick mark on both YV and VZ, that means V must be the midpoint of that side. Same idea over here, U must be the midpoint because we have 2 marks on either side of it. So that means we must be dealing with the mid-segment. Well, if we are dealing with the mid-segment, that means that these 2 are parallel. Remember the symbol for parallel when you're marking it up on your picture is to just put arrowheads on those lines. So we want to eventually find the measure of angle VUZ. Use the middle letter, so that's where the angle is actually happening. So if we follow V, then U, then Z, that's going to be this angle right here. I'm just going to put an X in there, or actually X is already in our problem, so we can't use that. I'm going to put a T in there. And we'll be looking for angle T. Well, one of the things we can do, because we have parallel lines, is we can extend our lines so it looks more similar to our parallel line picture. And what I want you to notice is that this 65 is in the bottom right of the intersection. Angle T is also in the bottom right of the intersection. So those are our corresponding angles when we have parallel lines, which are always equal. So we'll just have the angle VUZ equals 65 degrees. If we go over to 3, We've got the markings over on the left to show that this is a midpoint, the double markings to show that this is a midpoint. So we're dealing with a midsegment. And I think this is actually the same numbers that we just saw in number one, but if that third side is 18, the midsegment should be half that length, so that length is just 9. Or in other words, if you wanted to set it up as an equation, you could say that if you double the midsegment, that should equal the third side. So 2x would equal 18, and when you divide both sides by 2, that would give you that x equals 9. All right, going over to the next page. We first want to recognize we got our 2 tick marks over on the left, so that means this is a midpoint. The 1 tick mark, meaning those segments are the same, meaning that's a midpoint. So that length 3x is a midsegment, meaning we know it's parallel to the third side, and it's also going to be half its size. So if we want to make them equal, we've got to take the smaller one and double it. So we'll do 2 times 3x, and end up equaling the third side 84. So that's 6x equals 84. And if we divide both sides by 6, we would end up getting x is 14. Double check the problem. All we want to do is solve for x, so we're in good shape. Going on to number 5, we see our tick marks there. So 2 single tick marks mean that's the midpoint. The 2 double tick marks mean that's the midpoint. So we're dealing with the midsegment here. So we're dealing with the lengths of the midsegment and the third side. So if we double the midsegment, so 2 times 5, it will equal the third side. So this will give us 10 equals x minus 1. Add the 1, you get 11 equals x. Double check the question. That's all we wanted to do. So nothing else we have to do in terms of subbing in. All right, going on to number 6, we're working with some angles here. So first off, I want you to think of just the big triangle here. We saw in Unit 2 that the angles in a triangle will add up to 180 degrees. So an equation we can set up is that 50 plus 60 plus y should equal 180. If we combine like terms on the left, that's 110 plus y equals 180. We can subtract 110 on both sides. So we get y equals 70. So that's one of our variables. For the other variable, we can use the fact that the mid-segment has to be parallel to that third side. Well, let's extend our parallel lines. And notice this 50 would be in the top right of the intersection. X is also in the top right of the intersection. So those would be corresponding angles, which when you have parallel lines, those are equal. So we'll just have x equals 50 degrees. So moving on to 7, we'll give you a minute to read through that paragraph. All right, so we want to find the distance across the lake. Notice these numbers are in strides. So eventually we'll have to convert it to feet, but let's find the strides amount first. X is not in our problem, so I can put X here. If X was in the problem somewhere, I'd have to use a different variable. So because these sets are congruent, we're dealing with a midsegment here. So if we double the midsegment, it should equal the third side. If we divide by 2, we get X is 125. And that's a number of strides. Well, each stride is 3.5 feet. So we can just do 125 strides times 3.5 feet, and that'll tell us the total distance across. So we would end up with 437.5 feet. So this is a way that the mid segment can be used to indirectly measure something. Like we can't like take a tape measure and just stretch it across the lake, but we could measure using strides the amount on land, turn it into a triangle, and then use our property of the mid segment to actually find that measurement. All right, last question we'll look at is number 8. We've got a whole bunch of expressions. Notice there's 2 variables, so we want to set up 2 equations. Well, over on the left, notice we have double tick marks on both of those expressions. So that means that those are equal. So we'll have 2y plus 8 equals 4x minus 5. And then, because we've got those tick marks signifying a midpoint for each of these, we've got a midsegment, so we can set up an equation with our midsegment. If we double the midsegment, it will equal the third side. So really, this one's going to be 4x equals 4y minus 7. And if we subtract the 4y over, it'll be 4x minus 4y equals negative 7. And that one's in elimination form. Let's get the other one in elimination form. I'm going to subtract the 8 over. That'll give us 2y equals 4x minus 13. I'll subtract the 4x over. And that gives us minus 4x plus 2y equals negative 13. I'll rewrite the other equation right underneath it so that we can do our elimination. And conveniently, the x's already have the same number but different signs in front. So we don't have to multiply anything, we can just add them together. The x's wipe out, we'll get negative 2y equals negative 20. We'll divide by negative 2 to give us y equals 10. Doesn't matter which equation you sub into, I'm going to sub into this one over here. So we'll have 4x minus 4 times 10 equals negative 7. That'll be 4x minus 40 equals negative 7. Add the 40 over, you've got 4x equals 33. Divide by 4. This is not going to come out as an integer, but it does come out reasonably nice. It'll be 8.25, or you could just leave it as 33/4, and that would be fine as well. So again, the Unit 3 Day 1 homework don't do that until tomorrow night. Tonight you should be focusing on studying for the test tomorrow. I will be in school for ninth period today in case people wanted to come in and do that extra Schoology practice with me after school. If you struggled on the first test, this would be a great idea to come in and do that. So just to make sure we're clear where it is, so go to our Geometry Schoology page, go to Unit 2, and it's that very first link there, Extra Test 2 Practice. Try it on a separate sheet of paper. Your answer key for it is in the next link, so you can check and see how you did. And then that third link down is just what the review video from Monday's class. And the purpose for having that there is so if you need to see the constructions being done out, you can go there and just skip ahead to where we did the constructions. So you have those as resources to help you prepare for the test tonight. Everyone should be doing something to prepare for the test, and I would strongly suggest to go through and do this practice. And again, I am after school today if you want to come in and do the extra practice with me after school. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you tomorrow.